Billy Joe Rubideoux makes improved steak knives. William Hovey Smith, 2017. I'm the author of Backyard Deer Hunting and also the owner of a new company, Hovey's Knives of China. And here we rebuild some common steak knives. This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And I'm also the owner of a new company, Hovey's Knives of China. And we rebuild cutlery. And today, I'd like to talk to you about steak knives. On the table before me are a series of steak knives that are just randomly selected. Some of them have somewhat unusual designs, like this. Others are like this, with a serrated edge. In fact, all of these have serrated edges, some of which are much more pronounced than others. This is ground on one side, serrated on one side. Now, this is a knife from a set which is sitting here, and several things are wrong with it. One is the handle materials is some sort of tropical soft wood that takes a dark stain, but if you put it in the dishwasher, this is what happens to it. And incidentally, you should never put your wood handle knives in water, and especially not in the dishwasher, or you will ruin them. Well, someone did, at any rate. Now, this particular blade has these very nice milled serrations on it. And to do this, they left the steel soft, too soft in fact. So, what we have done is strip the scales off this knife's two brothers here, and we have hardened them, as well as removed the serrations by grinding. So now we have a hard, but still flexible blade. The problem with hardening is you do too much hardening, or you do the inappropriate kind of hardening, and the blade can become so brittle that you can actually crack it like this. Dink! That's not good. But this stood up to our hardening test just fine. So it's now a harder steel. It now has a straight edge on it instead of serrations. And so we're going to handle this with cocoa wood, which is a nice, attractive wood. So we're going to be about doing this and show you how it's done. Will they cut? Oh, of course they will. They'll cut much better. You'll notice that surgeons do not use serrated scalpels when they cut on you. And the reason being is these serrations tear up too much meat. Now, if you have a nice juicy steak that you've paid $18 or $20 for, and it's served to you, and you have to use a serrated knife to cut it, that's not acceptable. Send the thing back. I mean, that's a terrible piece of meat. But serrated knives, in general, have only two uses. One for cutting frozen meat, and the other for cutting crusty breads. You don't need serrations, and you don't want them on a good steak knife. Our scale material has a distinct bow in it. So the first thing we have to do is put it on our belt sander here and remove this bow so we get a tight fit between the scales and the steel. These are the blades after this one has gone through the buffing process, and you buff before you attach the scales, because you can get back in here and make sure that this joint is clean. Basically what we've done, we've run it through 3 different grades of wheels, and so we've got it up to a semi-bright finish. We've not got all the little scratches out of it, and nor do we intend to for the price that I'm going to sell the knives. The original knife here had a lot of grinding scratches all along the blade, and those were very difficult to try to get out altogether. And of course, this is a blade as it looked when we took it out of the oven after heat treatment. So we're making reasonable progress with our little steak knife here. And now we progress to finish up this one in like manner, and start putting some scales on them. In case I've never shown you what a polishing step looks like, we have 3 8-inch grinders here. The grinder you're looking at has Scotch bright wheels on it. The medium one is furthest from you, and the finer one closer to you. I've done 2 passes with the coarser wheel on this blade. And that's what it looked like before I started. And with 2 passes, this is what it looks like. When you do a blade on one of these wheels, you want to hold it in this arc right here, not up here, but down in this arc. And you want to brace it with your hands. And you do want to wear gloves because these things get right hot. Okay, now that's about as well as can be done with that. And you always polish with the edge down. We're going to give them a little dressing of material. That's sufficient. Okay. Now these will actually take the blade away from you and fling it down on the floor if you do not have it very tightly held and glued. Building up a lot of heat against the glove. You also want to wear eye protection because stuff is coming up actually in your face. There you go. That's how you get a reasonable polish on these blades. I don't like the way this material is responding. I've already broken 1 scale from brittle failure. And on the inside, this is a laminated material, and one of the laminations is broken, and so there's a gap between the 2 scales, and I'm going to start over, and I'm just going to use a new handle material. Doing a pair of knives lets you see the profile of the 2 knife grips. Since these knives start off with irregular blocks of wood, the logical question is, well, how do you know when you're even, when you've got the grips ground correctly? Well, it's done by feel. It's not done by measurement. If the grip feels good in the hand, if you feel a rough spot, if you feel a sharp spot, then you grind it away. If you feel a thicker spot, you do the same. Until finally, from the feel in the hand, you get the grip right. And if it's a little bit asymmetric one way or another, that's not significant in my book. It's how the grip feels. Those hands, remember, are not symmetrical either. So there is no particular reason that a knife scale should be absolutely symmetrical. It's how it feels and acts in the hand that's significant. I've run into some bad luck today putting scales on my steak knives. So what I've done is just put a couple together temporarily with pins because I want to see how this blade works. I think it's going to cut pretty well, and I've got a bunch of pork here to cut up. I'm going to do a pasta sauce from it. So we're going to give it a try. and then finish it up tomorrow. Since this is raw wild hog, I'm wearing gloves. This is the title panel of my video on how I took that wild hog. Well, we are very nearly through cutting, and the little blade is still doing very well despite being used on this cutting board. These cutting boards are evil in the sense that they will dull a blade almost faster than anything except cutting cardboard. But she's still doing very nicely, including slicing off these thin membranes and getting rid of any little gristle and stuff. And incidentally, time was that this is how you prepare meat for spaghetti sauce and such. Before the advent of grinders, or in households who were too poor to afford a grinder, this was how the meat was done. It's also unusual that I'm using pork for a pasta sauce. Usually one would use beef, and most particularly ground beef, but I'm using cut pork instead, and more usually I'd use ground hamburger. But for this small quantity of meat, I didn't want to bother with getting out and cleaning up a grinder, so we'll do it the old-fashioned way. And what prompted all this was that a friend gave me 2 jars of seasoned tomatoes. And so I'm going to use up those, and this is going to be about the right quantity of meat. So the blade has proved itself worthy enough to have a good set of rosewood scales. So that's what I'm going to dress it up with. Look at some of my previous videos for information on grinding and fitting wooden grip scales. We now have our 2 steak knives completed, one of which passes muster and the other does not. So this one we'll keep around the house here. The problem was I put this pin a little tall on this side, and we also had a breakout on the top of this scale. So this one, yeah, we're going to keep around the house. But this one turned out right well. Like the way it feels, like the way it looks, and certainly it's a vast improvement over the original design. After much work with my knives in the last week, we have a rare commodity here, and that is an actual piece of beef steak. I very seldom eat beef, and we're going to see how these knives do on it. Well, certainly they cut baked potatoes, but then what doesn't? And now, beef steak. We've reheated it with moisture. Have it nice and warm again without drying it out. And we will see how it cuts. That's very nice. Very easy. Okay. Now here's the serrated knife, which I have bad-mouthed. It saws through, but cuts more raggedly, as one might suspect. And takes more energy in the cut. This gives a nice, even, smooth cut, and does better all around. You know, the two, yeah, much prefer this. It's good steak too, by the way. And for now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe. Goodbye, God bless, and see you next time. Here is our newly granted U.S. trademark. Also, a look at our quality control guy, some of our Hovey's knives of China blades, and here are some more of them on 1-inch pegboard. Among my books are Backyard Deer Hunting, the prize-winning Extreme Muzzleloading, Crossbow Hunting, and Practical Bow Fishing, and all of these have chapters on knives and how to use them. Heat treating and grinding the edges on steak knives and installing the grips of $75 a knife. If all I have to do is just touch up the edge and polish it, then that's $25 a knife. For more information on Hovey's Knives of China, you can go to the website below. For more information on my books, blogs, and more than 625 videos, go to www.hoveysmith.com. Good hunting and good eating from the outdoors. Goodbye, and God bless.